Salute and welcome to episode 2 of the Pod-Scribe Devlog. So now I'm going to be introducing Firebase. So I've already implemented it into the Pod-Scribe application, but I figured I would break it down how I did it, how you get started with it. Now Firebase is a backend as a service platform that Google has created, and it can just kind of take care of some of the heavy lifting of the backend stuff. I love Node.js, I love SQL and all that, but when you're trying to expedite the process of creating an application, this is a great tool. So I'm going to show you how I got started in creating an account. First, you just have to go to firebase.google.com, and you can click in and sign in with the Gmail account. After that, it's going to ask you to get started. You could try a demo, you can watch a video on it, but I'm going to show you exactly how I started my project. Click get started. And what's going to happen is you're going to show all your projects if you've already created an account. If you don't have an account, you're going to have just add project here. Now I'm going to start from this top. I'm going to show a test model of me starting a project so you know what I've already done with the Pod-Scribe application up to this point and how the functions I'm using from this library are going to associate with the back end and how we communicate with it. So I'm just going to create a test file. You're going to ask for your podcast, your project's name, and you want to put in, I'm just putting in test for now. Now, if you have a Google Analytics account, you can enable that, saying that right here. You can enable that. Me, I don't, so I'm just going to create the project without it. Now, it's going to take some time to load up, so just bear with me here. All right, and there we go. Once it's been created, the project dashboard will be created. It's going to say your project's name, your new project is ready, and you're going to hit continue. All right. Now, depending on what project you're trying to create, if it's a mobile application, they have a setup for iOS and Apple, and also one for Android. Me, I'm doing a web application, as Pod-Scribe will be something that's accessed on the web. So I clicked on web to create and initialize that as a project here. It's going to ask for your web application's name. I'm just going to put test again to register the application. Now this part next is very important. This is how you're going to download the library to your project. You want to copy this by clicking this button, or you can just scroll and copy and paste it yourself. But you want to take this and you want to go back to your project and you want to paste it here. And then, press enter and let it download. I already have it downloaded, so I'm not going to do that right now. But that's what you're going to do if you're starting a project, just to make sure that, whether it's your CLI or your terminal, just so that you have all the, that in your packages, all the required routes and paths to the library. Next, you want to make sure that you add in this SDK import function as well as your configuration, because this is how your front end is going to communicate with the back end, that is Firebase. So how I did this is, you can either just copy and paste this, or you can type it out yourself. I have it over here. And what I did is I created a entirely separate file for my Firebase information. I named it firebase.js. I put it in my source folder, and I then just copied and pasted it, and I added the function here. So it's import, open curly braces, initialize app, close curly braces from Firebase/app. Now this is going to make sure that you can communicate with the backend like we mentioned before, but not only that, you need also to have your configuration also. So you want to copy and paste your configuration as I just showed you on from your project, and it's right here. You want to copy and paste the exact thing because it's a specific key, it's a specific domain. All this is vital so that your front end can communicate with your back end. Now, let's say, for instance, you said continue to console, and you're like, oh man, I forgot. I didn't get the config. Go to this little gear icon here to your settings, project settings, and just scroll down and you'll be able to find it over here, and you can just grab it from over here. And then you want to you make sure that that function to initialize the application, just so you can get access to the Firebase, library. You either can copy this and put it in a constant, but me, I just want to initialize it immediately, so I just essentially uh, just invoke the function itself, initialize app, and you want to pass in your configuration. So you pass in your configuration so they know, all right, we're starting with this project here. On this project, it connects the two. Now, there are a couple of services, as I mentioned before, that you can use Firebase for. I'm going to be using it for 3 in particular. One's their cloud storage, their database, and their authentication. So we have to create functions grab some functions from the library to make sure that we can initialize and let them know that, hey, this project is going to be using those services on Firebase as well. And what I did is I put them into their own little constant variables so we can grab them. Excuse me. But before I actually get to this, let me show you how to get started with it on Firebase. Then we'll come right back here and I'll show you what the actual syntax is to make sure that it connects. All right. All right. So you want to go to build. Now you have all these services that they provide you, including hosting, extensions are there, machine learning if you're doing some of that. Let's start with authentication. We want to make sure that the Pod-Scribe application can authenticate all the users that we are bringing in. So I grabbed that. It's going to add that to your project shortcuts up here, and you want to click Get Started. Now, there's many ways to authenticate a user to a application. I'm sure nowadays you've seen online, whether it be on your phone or online, that you can sign in some places with a Facebook account or a Gmail account. Right now, we're going to just make it plain and simple as an email and password, and we're also going to be using Google Gmail to log in, but I'll show you how I do that in future episode. But right now, let's just tackle the email and password situations where they can just type in their email, type in their password, confirm it, and make sure that they can create an account with your application. So what we're going to do is let them know that we want to enable it. It says email, password link, password list sign in. Password list authentication with email link requires additional configuration steps. Follow the steps for your platform. Password list authentication. I'm not going to do that. We want them to have a password. So we save it. Boom. Now it's enabled. So now your authentication is enabled. We go back on the Firebase side of things. So now we want to go back to our project, and we want to make sure that we grab the authentication and make sure that we understand that, hey, we're using that in this project here. So what I did is it's specific to Firebase. You want to grab these, especially you want to grab the get auth function, and you want to initialize that by putting that in a variable. And the reason why I'm putting that in the variable is because I'm going to be passing this down to other components, because you want to get authenticated when you log in, and we want to get authenticated when you register. And when you sign out, we want to make sure that you're no longer authenticated. So this is something that you're going to be passing down to your components. So it's get auth. Remember, import, open curly braces, get auth. I'm also passing in Google Auth Provider at the moment, but you can ignore that for now. I'll tell you about that in a future episode, like I mentioned. Close curly brackets from Firebase/auth. That is the route and path that you can grab that function. Now, in Firebase version 9, you're going to be pulling in specific functions. So you don't want to do something like, auth.getAuth. Even though you're getting it from the auth path, they no longer support this type of syntax. So just keep that in mind. So version 9, you pull in the specific one, and then you put it into a constant variable or a variable if you're choosing, all right? Now, for me, I'm also using the Firebase database, Firestore, excuse me. They call it Firestore database. I go here, and you want to, if you want to watch the video, you can watch these videos to give you more clarity on it. But you want to click Create Database. just so that you can have all your users, well, all your information for your 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 project in here. So like essentially, if you ever use Node.js or SQL, you know that data is stored in tables. As tables that have columns and rows of information, so you can then make queries, pull it out, get certain things from it, and then display it on your application, or use it within your application. So that's what this is for, the Firestore, and that's where you store all that stuff. So you want to first make sure that you designate your location, NAM5 if you're in the United States, but if you're not, you want to find your location and choose that. Click next. I'm going to start in test mode. This is like a little bit lenient on the security rules, so that I don't have to pass in a password every time I want to delete something, or if I want to add something to our database. We don't have to necessarily, because the process of creating a application is a lot of trial and error. So this is going to make it a little bit less strict, I guess, if you want to put it. So it's a little bit more lenient. So the default security rules for test mode allow anyone with your database reference to view, edit, delete all data in your database for the next 30 days. I'm the only one that's going to be doing that. If you're the one making your project, or a team, you guys will be able to do all that without having to slow down the process with like passwords and authentication just to delete something, because I'm going to be creating John Doe's and Jane Doe emails and information that is not real people, and eventually got deleted and added again and check things out, and it's just going to get messy or it's going to be longer if you have to go through certain hurdles to do that. So you're going to come to here where it says Cloud Firestore. This is your Firestore, and this is where I was talking about the tables. They call it collections. So if you ever worked with SQL, that's the table. They have each is a table. Or if you ever made migrations with Node.js, it's a table that you want to then store your data in, right? You make certain denominations of what is able to be put into your tables and what type of data is there, whether it's a string, whether it's a Boolean, and so on and so forth. All right, so let's say you want to start a collection. Let's say it was something like products. You can click on Start Collection. Mind you, like I said, this is essentially your table. Like if you have ever used SQL, this will be your table name. So let's say this is products. And so you have a store, you have products. Now this document ID is how we reference that product. So essentially this is what you would be the equivalent of a primary key in SQL, and how you say, oh, that is what we're talking, how we pair it to something. So this is going to be what we're recognizing that product by, each product by, excuse me. So the field could be, let's say here's a clothing store. It could be shirts, and it could be a string. It could be a Gucci shirt. You could save that. Actually, cancel. What's more appropriate, honestly, I'm going to delete that field. What's more appropriate is that you put name as the field. Name. So this key would be your shirts. The field will be name. The value will be your Gucci shirt. So this is your Gucci shirt. You can add another document that will represent maybe your shoes, but you want to put the name. You know what? What it would be like is if you put type, type shoes. You can add a field, name, let's say they're Jordans. Add a price, say there, and that's going to be a number. So you want to change the type. So this is the type of product, or you want to put product type just so it doesn't get confused. Let's say the drawings are like, I don't know. Let's say they're $650. I don't know how much Jordans cost, so I'm not a Jordan fan. All right, but boom, that's kind of more like it. You would have your products, which is your collections, which in SQL will be tables. Then you have your primary key that would notice, okay, what product are we talking about? We're talking about your Gucci. Not right now, it's a Gucci something, but we can also add a field so we can say product type. And that can be shirt, And I guess you get the idea. Price, it could be, I don't know, $90. And make that a number. And let's say it's like in stock. Is it in stock? It might be sold out. So you make it a Boolean and make it false if they're not in stock, And just, showing examples of what you could do with Firestore to make to flesh out the data you may possibly have in a project. But I think you get the idea. Let's just change this Boolean to true. Man, we can't just have nothing in this store, right? In this fictitious store. So that's how it would work. Now, when you're working in your project, you're going to need to, a lot of times, pull in the collection so you know what collection you're dealing with. And you're going to need a reference to the document, which is the key here. So just keep that in mind. We're going to show you a little bit of that in the future episode of how I'm using that authentication. So once the authentication is set up, there's no users right now in the project because this is a test. I'm going to show you how I do that on the Pod-Scribe. This is your Firestore, and this is how you can add fields. Now, keep in mind that in my project right now, all I'm putting in there is users at the moment. In the future, I will want to add in, the documentation or the files of, or references to the files of, users' uploads. So when they upload a podcast, I want to also add this to this. So that's what's going to relate to my project. But this is just an example on how you can set these things up. Now, we're adding products manually. In my Pod-Scribe application, I will not be adding them manually. So keep that in mind, and I'm gonna show you that in the next episode exactly how I will be dynamically adding users through the application. But for us to access the Firestore, like I said before, we do have to initialize it, and we want to put that in const db equals get Firestore, and we want to make sure that that function is getting pulled at a Firebase /Firestore. And all this is import, open curly brackets, get Firestore, close curly brackets from Firebase /Firestore. What this is saying is pretty much, hey, Firebase, we're going to be using your Firestore, and we need to know how to communicate with that Firestore. Hey, Firebase, we need to use your authentication service, and we need to know how and when we're going to be communicating with that authentication service, and that's what getAuth is doing. That's what Firestore is. It's just getting the access to your specific projects, authentication in Firebase. Now, the storage is here too. I'm not going to get too much into that, but I have it stored here for future reference. And I also need to export all three of these. So this is how you initialize your access to Firebase within your own project. I'm going to stop here. And then on the next episode, I'm going to get into how I specifically used authentication and the Firestore to add users and user data to it. Stay tuned, and thank you for joining me on the journey. Peace.